Hey guys, I have a fun art project for us to try today. We are going to do flower mandalas. Mandala is anything that is circular in shape. Some of you might have tuned in last week when we did CD mandalas and I made this. Mandala literally means sacred circle, and it's anything that is circular. Why we do mandalas is because we often find that they are healing, they help us focus, they help us center. Something about a circle shape, right, has a center, and when we draw within it, it helps us feel centered. Flowers are naturally circular in shape. If you look at them, many of them are circular. They kind of grow from a center outward. And I thought with May coming up, it'd be a great time to draw a flower. There's an old saying that goes, April showers bring May flowers. Even though it hasn't been super rainy this April, it has been a tough month, and I think it's a nice idea to think that with this time of just kind of having to be inside and kind of some of us feeling maybe a little bit more anxious than normal, trying to think of some things that are really positive that might be coming our way. So I like the idea of drawing a flower. We're going to actually use a CD as a template. It'll help guide us. I'm going to do two examples of ways you can do flowers, but you really can choose your own supplies. Things you'll need is some paper. I'm using watercolor paper. Anything circular that you can trace, I'm going to use a CD, and I recommend a CD because you can use the outside and this kind of center opening to help guide you. Something to trace it with, like a pen or a pencil. And then you can choose what supplies you want for your flower itself. I recommend markers. You can also use paints if you want to kind of explore painting. The other thing that you can try is doing some collage work using tissue paper or paper scraps. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start by using the markers, and I'll show you how to do that. And then in the second half of the video, I'll walk you through a cool way to do a collage flower using glue like this, or using Mod Podge, which is something that we've used pretty much every single week, I think, since I started these classes. So you might be familiar with this product. You can also use white glue. So we'll begin with a simple marker flower and then walk through some steps of how you can add to it and do some different techniques. You'll begin with a piece of paper and then take an object and place it on so you can trace. If you're using a CD, I recommend tracing the outside first. And then tracing the inner circle. You'll end up with something a lot like this. And what's kind of nice about this is flowers often do have a center. You can see right here. And then the petals of a flower grow outwards. And so you can kind of have a guide. You have your center, and then you have an outside perimeter where you can draw the rest of your image. If you don't have a CD, it's not a big deal. You can trace any circular object, something like this, and then just create your own center with a smaller circular object. So be creative, work with what you have, but this is your beginning template. The next step is to consider how you want to draw your petals and what other details you might want to add. Let's take a brief moment to observe an actual flower and the way that petals grow. If you look at a flower, you might notice that petals do not grow directly on top of one another. They kind of grow off to the side of the petal that is directly below them. I think this is because each petal wants to get the maximum amount of sunlight, and if petals grow right on top of one another, they would be blocking sunlight from the petal beneath them. When you draw your flower, we will use this technique. You will not draw petals directly on top of one another. Instead, we will try and layer them and spread them out as much as possible. When you begin to draw your petals, it's a good idea to use pencil. That way, if you do make a mistake, you can erase it. I usually just pick one spot to start. I even like to draw a little line to sort of guide where my petal is going to go. It's very faint, you can kind of see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the sides around that center line. So I have the petal kind of going like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can see my line is in the middle there, and then it just helped me guide that petal. I like to think in sets of 3. So I drew one here, I'm going to draw one maybe up here. We talked about flowers and how they grow and how the petals don't overlap, so you want to space them out in the beginning so you make lots of room for your flower to grow. So I have 1, 2, and then almost like I'm doing a triangle, I'm going to do my third one over here, forming almost like a triangle. So I'm going to draw a faint line to kind of guide it. Like so. If you want, you can erase your guidelines in the middle. So that's what we have. The next step is to start to draw petals in between your petals. So that's the first layer. The second layer is going to go right in between. So between these two, I'm going to draw a petal, a fourth petal. And then I'm going to draw a fifth one in between these two. And then my sixth petal in between these two. We have 6 petals. You can keep going, or you can stop there. I'm going to add a few more. I like the look. So again, you're going in between petals. So in between this one and this one, I'm going to draw a petal. Maybe this one's a little bit smaller. It's kind of in the background. Turn your drawing and just keep going. Keep adding petals. I've added my petals, and now it's time to color them in. I'm going to use markers for this one. I feel like it's a great media, and it gives you lots of versatility. My preferred markers are these Mr. Sketch markers, and the reason I like them is because they have what you call a chisel tip. A chisel tip gives you a lot of diversity because you can make different types of marks depending how you hold it. If I make a mark with the wide part, you can see it's a kind of wide mark. If I turn it, I can make kind of a slightly less wide mark, and then if I use the very point of that chisel, I can make a thin line. So you can see how you get 3 different lines within one marker. I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to begin with my petals. I'm going to save my center for last. So I have this pink, a darker pink, and I'm going to use it to outline some of my petals, just kind of going over where my pencil lines were. If you have different shades, it's a good chance to kind of break out those different shades of pink and use them. I like to color the parts closest to the center here in the tips, and then fill it in with a different color or different shade. So I have this lighter pink I'm going to fill it in with. Sometimes it's kind of fun to add a completely different color. So this is pink, but I'm going to add some yellow, and we'll see what it makes. It's a kind of fun way of blending colors and just seeing what you get. Might add some orange. Sometimes petals have little veins that you can see, so go ahead and add those in if you want. It's just drawing a line from the center towards the tip of each petal. Now we get to do our center. So for your center here, pick a color. I'm going to do mine in yellow. And because it's the very center of your flower and your mandala, I think it's a good idea to put something in there that's really important to you. I put a heart in mine. It's a good reminder of all the people that are very important to me. So that's the symbol I chose. The next step, if you want, is you can add some leaves. So for leaves, you can draw them however you want. I'm going to draw little tiny leaves on mine, just kind of behind the petals here. Fill in the spaces. If you want, you can also add a little outline of a color. So I'm going to use blue and just outline my circle, my mandala, with this pretty blue color. If you're using paint, it's actually not that different. You can just sort of take a brush and do the same work. And one thing that you might not know is you can use a paintbrush with these markers, these flexible markers, and it can help to blend your colors. Check it out. It's almost like painting, and you're using markers instead of paint. Of course, you can actually use paint if you want. You don't need to use markers. But I like using a paintbrush to blend my markers. I think it looks very pretty. Now we're going to try and do a flower, but we're going to use collage instead. So we practiced one with marker. Now we're going to use tissue paper like this and see if we can make some petals out of it and glue them on. For your tissue paper flower, begin with a piece of paper and a CD that you can trace for your mandala shape. Trace your mandala. You can see I even have the center here. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the tissue and we're just going to do some ripping to make petals. These don't have to be very precise. We're just going to take our glue. You can use Mod Podge as well. I like the glue stick for this because it's a little bit less messy. And we're just gonna glue on our little petals in a circle shape. You wanna do a few at a time and make sure you kind of spread them out around the circle. Put petals in between other ones. That's how flowers grow. helps to twist as you go. Creates more texture for your flower. You can see how it's progressing. Add more petals if you like, or if you think there's any gaps, you can add a petal there. You can take green tissue paper and use it to make leaves. Same as making the petals, you just rip off pieces and stick them on. You want to tuck your leaves under the petals, make them look like they belong under the petals. You might want to go back through and layer a few more petals on top if your leaves kind of mess up your design. That's okay. The last step here is to draw your center. You can use tissue paper, or if you want, you can add it with marker. It's up to you. I have this little yellow center. I'm gonna put it in here. And just like before, I'm gonna draw something that's important to me. I might color that one in. Something that you can do with this flower mandala that I think is kind of nice is take a pen and on each of your petals write a quick little reminder for yourself or an affirmation, something that's sort of positive, either about yourself or just about life that you want to remember, and write those on your petals. I'm going to go ahead and write a few affirmations right now. I wrote my affirmations. If you decide to write things on your petals, it's nice to take your art, look at it, and read them out loud. My flower says, "You make beautiful art. It's okay to be anxious. You're a good friend to others. You are a good baker." And the other thing I wrote is what I told you in the beginning. April showers bring May flowers. I hope that you will share what you made with us. I can't wait to see it.